I love a nice cold drink on a nice summer day. I also love a whole lot of bass. But my wife, she's not always in agreement with that. She likes things like this end table for example. She loves furniture. So I thought to myself, why not have both? And that's exactly what this is. This might look like an end table to everyone that comes in the house, but what this really is, it's a 15-inch, heart-stopping, house-shaking, groundbreaking subwoofer. And there's an amplifier in the back, all in one, for your home theater needs. That way you can have your bass and your wife can have her furniture. So if your wife has been asking you for new furniture, get ready to build something like this. You can have your bass, she can have her furniture. And I'm going to show you how to do this for right around $350. I'll show you that right now.
Not only is this a really fun build, but it's practical in many ways because not only is it an end table or piece of furniture, but it also becomes part of your home theater equipment. So it's a win-win for everyone. If you're in a small apartment, small house, something like that, it works out really well. And if you have someone that doesn't like to see all your audio equipment, well, it works out well then too. Now you're going to see me using a lot of tools such as, like a CNC machine like you see here. You're going to see me using nail guns and all kinds of things. Guys, you can do this build with just rudimentary tools. You don't need a lot of high-end tools like I'm using. In fact, just to cut this hole, I'm not going to be flush mounting this particular woofer, and because of that, you could just use something as simple as a jigsaw to be able to cut this. Now, all the wood that you need for this, just take a cut sheet down, which there will be a cut list in the directions. There will be written directions. There will be a link down in the description. Just read it. You'll be able to click on the link and it'll give you all the written instructions as well. And I'll try to have a cut list on there. That cut list you'll be able to take to your local lumber yard and they'll be able to cut that for you. Even your big box stores like your Home Depots and your Lowe's and things of that nature, they'll typically cut those for you. The great thing is you don't need a lot of cuts for this type of build as far as beyond what Home Depot would cut. You're going to cut some places for the amp, the ports, and the subwoofer. Like I said, all of those you can use something simple, a router, or even a jigsaw. Now I am gluing this together. Now when I glue this together, I just want you to know, yes, mustard is the best thing to use for glue. Okay, obviously I'm joking. The best thing is like a Titebond 2. I'll put links to all of the stuff that I use in the video, so if you're interested in any of that. But I will tell you that mustard bottle does really come in handy. It's kind of a nice little glue bottle for those who don't have glue bottles. It's pretty good. I've used a couple different types of glue bottles, and honestly, mustard's been my favorite. Now you're gonna see me clamping this. This is one of those things where, I have some nicer tools sometimes. You don't need to worry about that. If you just have like a drill, you can go ahead and get some screws and screw this together as well as gluing it. You don't necessarily need clamps like I'm using. But if you do have them, you might as well use a lot of them. Now you're also going to notice that I'm not gluing on the front and rear baffle yet. I just like to do part of it at a time and make sure all the edges are nice and even when I'm doing this. It helps to get rid of all the glue if you can, or at least as much as you can. It just saves you some sanding a little bit later. Now I might have put my rear on backwards here. When I say might, I did. You can tell that because the ports are on the same side as the subwoofer hole on the top. The ports need to be on the opposite side, otherwise the ports will get in the way of the subwoofer. Now I did fix this on my build, but you're not going to see that. You're going to see it backwards right here. Don't do what I did. Make sure you double check. Sad thing is I told myself to double check and I still forgot to double check. Maybe you could write it down and you won't do what I did. Now I am cutting this. This is 1/4 inch laminated like birch ply. It's really cheap, but you can use MDF. In fact, I wanted to use MDF. They just didn't have any at the store when I got it. You're just gonna cut these down to size. I cut these down to 3.5 inches. Now keep in mind, this is just a box, so it can be really any design you want. Now for me, I use like a shaker style design, and that's what I'm cutting these out for. It's just for the design. The easiest tape measure you have right here is just a pencil. Just go ahead and take that pencil, put your board up against it and mark it. And then you can just go cut that right off and your boards will be perfect every time. That's just a pro tip for you. Always make sure you spread your glue out. That does make sure that you don't have any pockets or holes when you're gluing these on. All of this is for decoration though. So I'm going to be using a nail gun to put these in. You don't need that. You can just use a hammer and some tack nails if you have it. Or once again, you can use some type of screws. I mean, really, the aesthetic design is really up to you. But if you want to use like what I did, you're going to want to get some nails, and I wouldn't get anything bigger than 1 inch. You don't want to go through your 3/4 inch plywood or your 1/4 inch wood. So you don't really want the nails sticking inside. And I always cover up any imperfections with some type of wood putty. I use a lot of Timbermate stuff because I really appreciate and enjoy it, and I'll put that in the link too. It seems pretty expensive, but a little goes a long way with that stuff. Now I also like to caulk these inside windows. This just kind of helps you get a much better finish. At least that's the way that I see it. You're going to want to let that dry. Now glue typically takes about an hour to get to the minimum setness before you can move on, and you know, the same really with this type of material like silicone. You're going to probably want to give it at least an hour to dry, and if you can give it overnight, then go ahead as well. The feet. I made quite a bit of feet, and I just made this design up on the get-go. I mean, really, whatever type of feet you want is fine. You just want to make sure that they stick out tall enough that the subwoofer itself won't bottom out and hit the floor. And the biggest thing is, as well, you want to be able to make your feet about the same height that you want your end table to finish being. You don't want your end table being significantly larger than, of course, your couch. Now, I'm going to be using a 15-inch Pro woofer here, and a lot of people ask, well, why are you using a Pro style woofer versus, you know, like a normal subwoofer? And I'll tell you the reason why. Because this is going to be an end table, I wanted a Pro woofer for a couple reasons. One, it's a much higher sensitivity, and because it's a much higher sensitivity, it means we don't need much power to push it, so we can get by with a much lower amplifier, lower powered amplifier. And this lower powered amplifier is only about 250 watts, and this is an 8 ohm woofer, so we're really only giving that about half, so about 120-ish watts, just because we're losing some with efficiency. That would be max that you'd be giving this woofer. And because of that, that still gets it well over 100 decibels inside your room if you want it. And that's just impressive to get with one subwoofer. Keeps costs down, and it also keeps that subwoofer from moving as much, which means that you can easily put things on top of it without worrying about them bouncing off. Some people ask me, hey, aren't my keys and other things gonna fall off if I put them on top of there? And the answer is, I haven't had that issue at all. I keep remote controls on it all the time. I don't hear any vibrations on them, and I play my movies very loud. And I haven't had any issues with drinks falling off, so that's a good thing too. Now for the top, you're going to want the top to be about 2 inches bigger on either side, maybe 1.5 inches. That's really dependent on, you know, what you want the final outcome to be, but you want between a 3/4 inch to 1 inch overhang over your actual box itself. So, you know, depending on your design, it might be a little different than what I do. The easiest thing to do is, if you do have some bar clamps like this, is you can just put some glue in there and you can just clamp these together. I like to clamp this overnight, and that will actually give you a nice solid top when you're done. Some people don't have this. You can also use a Craig jig if you have a Craig jig. They're relatively inexpensive. I'll link some to it, and you can just use some pocket holes. It would do the same basic thing. Just make sure you line up the wood the way that you want the wood to look. So if you have any imperfections that you want on the other side, make sure that you put both boards that you want the bottom that way. I see a lot of people not lining that up. Also, once again, wipe the glue. Make sure that you don't tighten these too tight. If you tighten them too tight, you could end up warping the boards a little too. I'm just going to sand off the glue here. Just be careful not to divot inside. You don't want to create any divots. You really want to go about as flat as possible as you can with this. I do a rough sand with like 60 grit, then I'll come back with like a 120 or 220 grit sandpaper. Now, the thing that surprised me about this subwoofer too is although we tune it to around 33 hertz, you're actually going to be able to get down to about, well, at least I'm able to get down to 22 hertz in room response, which means that I'm getting the full range of sound, and it really does just absolutely, I mean, it can shake the whole house. I did round over both sides of the top because I have children. That's just something I decided to do. You don't have to do that. Now, talking a little bit more about the subwoofer, it's a little bit different type of sound than you would typically get with a normal subwoofer. And the reason why I say that is because with a PA subwoofer, you're getting a lot of SPL, a lot of pressure, and so you're feeling that pressure. But what you're not necessarily doing is you're not necessarily getting a lot of the noise that you associate with bass. So sometimes you take an 8, 10, a 12-inch subwoofer and you try to fill the whole room with sound, and what you're hearing is the motor moving like crazy. And that motor movement we have now associated sometimes with bass, and really what you're hearing is either distortion or mechanical movement of the woofer, and a lot of times you're not going to get that with this woofer because, well, it's not being pushed nearly as hard, which also means that it is a much lower distortion subwoofer than you would typically use as well. So I really like those benefits of it. Having said that, the sound may not be for everyone. It's definitely for me. I do enjoy it. Now the cool thing too is because this is ADOM, let's say you want matching end tables, you could put a secondary end table up and just hook up it in parallel to this subwoofer, and you can use the exact same amplifier. That means one amplifier will power 2 of these 15-inch subwoofers. So you could actually build that for right around $500 and have 2 15-inch subwoofers, the same amplifier that I'm using in this video, and you'd be set to go. Now I am going to glue the ports together with CA glue. I like that. It just takes about 10 seconds to glue together if you use the accelerator. It works really, really well. Also, when you're screwing in these ports, make sure that you have room to fit that port through, and if not, you need to glue that half of it inside the box while half of it's outside the box, because you don't want to not be able to put the port in after it's all glued together. I love Journal Finishes Armor Seal, one of my favorite finishes of all time. It's really nice. It gets hard as a rock, and you can get whatever finish you want, whether it be satin, semi-gloss, or gloss. Now I chose satin just so I didn't get as many reflections, especially at night when you're watching movies. I didn't really want a lot of reflections off of that, so I chose a satin finish. And this stuff is really easy to go on, 2 to 3 coats, and you got a really beautiful finish. Now I ended up just doing 2, may put 1 on again later. All you gotta do now, dress up your subwoofer end table however you want and enjoy it. I gotta tell you guys, it's really, really easy to do. I think any of you can do it. Check for the written instructions down in the link below. I hope you guys enjoy this, and now you've earned yourself a drink. I hope you like this video, and if you want to support this page, you can support it just like these Patreons by visiting patreon.com. A special thank you to all of my Patreons that have done that. If you don't want to do that but would like to show your appreciation, feel free to check the link in the description where it shows a way where you can give a tip for the design. I thank you guys, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you have a great day.